Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. Teresa, would you please call the roll for us?
Sure. Mr. Sondermeyer.
Here.
Ms. Wykoff.
Here.
Ms. Weiss. Here. Mr. Thies.
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi.
She's joining now.
Dr. Pandolfi. Mr. Lazio.
Here.
Ms. Lemunion. Ms. Stepp. Dr. Wilson. Mr. Cook.
Here.
Ms. Virgo.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi.
Here.
Thank you.
Teresa, if anybody wishes, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Rita just offered to have a short reading from the Torah. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to share a word from Deuteronomy 30, 14, 16. And this is when Moses is telling about God's contrasts. The word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. Lord, give us wisdom. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Matter for voting is the approval of the agendas. But before we proceed with this, we are going to be having a potentially lengthy closed session. So I think in fairness to our visitors, and thank you for coming, I propose that we move 5.1, which is the visitors' comments, to immediately follow section 3. So that way, anybody who wishes to make an offering, they're not stuck with waiting for us to finish a closed session. So with that amendment, I'd like a motion to approve that, to approve the agenda as modified.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Second. It's been moved and second that we approve the agenda as modified. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Or abstaining? Great. Thank you.
Can we get the okays from those online if they're on hold? On mute.
Teresa, do we know, are we still connected with?
Yes, we should be. Dr. Pandolfi, are you there?
Yes, I.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So.
Michelle.
Michelle is I.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, we need a minute to, it's kind of hard to unmute and that quick.
And next matter is approval of the minutes from our February 21st meeting. We have a motion for that. Oh, I'm sorry. That's included within the
Consent agenda.
totality of the consent agenda. So the consent agenda will be approved in the minutes and the expense report. So could we have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I.
I.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Okay, thank you. Now we can go on to our visitor section. Sandy, would you? Please.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Van Wagner, and I live in Smithville, Missouri. I've actually lived in all three counties at different points in my life. I am a retired public school teacher. I taught in the Park Hill School District for all of my career. I grew up in the Park Hill School District. My early childhood was just about a mile from here in Independence, Missouri. And my grandchildren are growing up in Lee Summit now. So I have interests in all three counties, and I have roots in all three counties. I am, as I mentioned, a retired school teacher. I also currently serve as a CASA in Jackson County, and I served on the Smithville School Board for 12 years. So that was my second career, sitting on the other side of the desk. And I had a nice conversation with Ron a week or so ago, and he encouraged me to come and speak to you about a letter that I sent that you should have received probably by now. And it just is a reflection of my personal observations. And I don't really want to read the whole letter to you, but I do want to go over some points about being in the audience and listening and trying to understand what's happening and taking place. And I understand that from a school board person's perspective, which is not too dissimilar than your roles here. As a lifelong Mid-Continent patron, I began following the school board meetings, and I must admit that I wasn't sure of the governance that the way that worked with the Mid-Continent library system until relatively recently. I knew the past CEO, and I've known librarians, and I actually worked on the Prop L campaign. I too am an elected committee woman for Clay County. So I just didn't, I don't know why, but it never occurred to me that the library system also had a board of trustees. So that was a learning thing for me. And I initially began trying to spend some time doing the online thing and listening to the board meetings online, and largely because I don't hear well anymore because I kind of am older, and I also don't see real well sometimes. But the point is that I was really frustrated with trying to hear the conversation and understand what people were talking about and saying individually when they were online. And so the next thing that I tried was to come to the in-person meetings. And that was a little bit more successful, but I still struggle with being able to really understand and hear and the communications, even though we're all in the same room and near at hand, there are some obstructions. And so one of the suggestions that I have is to remove this podium, and I know that you can get a podium on wheels that is mic'd and can be moved out of the way, because for me to be able to visually see the person that's talking helps me to understand what they're saying. And there are times when this is an obstruction to that, and this is solvable problem. Another thing that I would strongly encourage consideration is to install a microphone system at your tables. And your tables are set up for that. You've got little electronic holes and everything all in place. And that would help tremendously for people who are listening and trying to understand what you're saying online, as well as people in the audience. And sometimes when we're speaking, we don't realize how effective we are at being able to speak, and how effective people are at their ability to understand and hear. A few years ago, my board decided that we needed to quit killing trees. And we made the leap to go to a paperless board doc. And I would encourage you to consider doing something like that. I identified for you, we went through a company called icboard.com, board powered docs. We found that those documents were, first of all, the learning curve was very minimal. And even though none of the members of the board at that time grew up in a computer savvy society as we are in today, we all mastered it. No one failed. And it made it so much more logistically easy for us to see our agenda, but also for the audience to see the agenda. We voted on our screens, and so it took the place of having to do a roll call vote, and but it also recorded everyone's vote, and it was visible to everyone. It was very effective. And if you've not seen those kinds of documents used, I would encourage you to visit a local school board, because they do use them and they are very efficient and very successful. That brings me to the next suggestion, and that's the monitors. Our society is so different than the one that we grew up in, and perhaps the one that we spent our careers working in for the most part, because we are on screens and the world is just a different place. Recently, I took my grands down. My great nieces and nephews and my grandchildren, they're kind of all mixed together. They're kind of stair-stepped. And I took them to the Children's Literature Festival in Warrensburg, something that I go to every single year with my used to be students and now my grandchildren and my own children. I took them. So, and I think this was their 50th anniversary down there this year. But one of the things that we noticed in the library, my girls were fascinated by an old card catalog that was on display. And I was trying to explain to them how that was used. And they were just completely amazed that we would actually open the drawers and look for things alphabetically and identify the book that we were hunting. And then we would go and we would use the Dewey Decimal System and search for it in the library, and maybe a librarian would assist us with that process. But it occurred to me that their world is so different. And I think we have to approach things looking at not only what our world was like when we were growing up, but our world that we live in today. And so with that monitoring system, in the back of the room, you have this system, but no one here can really see that or read that. And with a retractable system, you could put in a very relatively inexpensive system right here. It's retractable, and it can, something that can come down and go back up into the ceiling. And so everyone in the room can see what you're seeing. And I think that would be very helpful and effective. I've noticed another practice, and I don't mean to find it, it's just struck me as odd. And that is the practice of identifying each other by different ways of communicating. Dr. Brown or Mrs. Jones or Mr. Smith or John or Don and I understand that in your communication with one another, you're comfortable in identifying or addressing yourself as Ron or Gordon or however, but it comes across when you're in the audience, especially on the online audience, because you all don't do the same thing. One person wants to be addressed as Dr. Jones and another person wants to be addressed as Mrs. Smith, or just Ron or Mike or friend or whatever, and that's fine, but that's not, it doesn't come across as understanding, and it almost sounds somewhat disrespectful. I'm sure it's not intended to be that way at all, but that's the way it comes across. And it seems to me that everybody might want to get on the same agreement page that, you know, when we're going to call roll, we're going to call Bob and Aaron and Ron, and we're going to say Mrs. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so. There's something about consistency. And that's just simply my observation. These are all just friendly observations, and I would encourage you to consider as much as you like or as little as you like. And you know, it's from my perspective, it's well-meaning and intended to be constructive, just from my particular observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The structure of the visitor comments is such that we can only be going in one directional, so you send it to us. But I do especially want to thank, I can't respond, but I definitely want to thank you for your wise comments. They're much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next topic is,
Mayor Rose. Mayor Rose.
oh, Mayor, please.
I always love the opportunity to talk, so. Well, good evening,
Good
Honorable
evening.
Chair and board members. It's probably the last time you're gonna see me for a while, I hope, but I've come here this evening because I know that you've got a lot of things on your agenda that you're gonna be considering this evening. And I just wanted to come tonight and thank you. I want to thank you for allowing me and my team to participate in the capital plan process. I want to thank you for allowing us to share our history and tell our story. I want to thank you for your willingness to create a first of its kind partnership that truly will be a model for the future. I want to thank you for considering what a new facility and programming in a welcoming, inviting, and efficient facility and the impacts that will be made now and in the future. Our city is continuing to invest in access, and I think I failed to mention to you before, we are currently constructing a new loop trail connection that will provide safe access to the new library site for walkers and bikers. I have been the mayor for 17 years. Riverside has changed. We are welcoming new residents and visitors every day. A modern library has been and will continue to be my top priority. And just very quickly, I held a community strategic plan last evening. We invited in people to talk about what Riverside will look like in the next 20 years. We had small groups and everybody discussed topics at their table. And I'm going to tell you, there were 6 tables in the room. They all presented out. But the conversation about the library is a very welcoming topic. And they are all very excited. And when one of the gentlemen in the room looked at me and said, "I cannot wait, my girls will be camped there." And then I thought to myself, oh, how fun would that be? Could you have a sleepover in the library? I think that would be a great event. But it's those little things that impact people. So I am hopeful your discussion tonight will bring this project over the line. And I'm here if you have any other questions for me. I'll be glad to answer any of them, but I want you to know your time has been priceless for me and being able to share the story and our journey as we move into the future. And I would love to stay and listen to some of your other meetings, but I have a board meeting to go to. And I have Brian Coral, our city administrator. I have Mike Duffy, our community development manager, and we work together as a team to try and bring the best for our community and the surrounding area. So I appreciate it so very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I will reach out.
Our next matter is a closed session, which means that we will have to scatter to the winds, reconvene after we resume the open session. So Cody, would you mind turning off the system, please?
Well, we first need to take the vote to go.
Okay, take a vote. Okay. We have a motion to recess our open meeting and reconvene in a closed meeting.
For the purposes of,
For the purposes that set forth in the on our Cody screen up there.
Hey, Ron, I don't know how this is Michelle. I'm on the phone now because my Zoom is not working. So I don't know how that's going to work for me.
Cody?
Michelle, I'm going to keep everyone who needs to be in the closed session in the meeting, so you don't need to worry about doing anything.
Okay,
You should-
I didn't know
you
if with
should
the
stay.
phone it was different. Sorry.
No, ma'am,
Okay.
you're good. Thank you for checking in, though.
Awesome. Thank you.
We would try it again. We have a motion to,
I move we go into closed session as explained on the screen for specifically the purposes of legal actions and number one and number three, hiring and firing as provided under Missouri state law.
second.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we open meeting, reconvene in a closed session. Any discussion? None, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining.